BaseballTalkRadio.com presents MLB This Week, the podcast. On this week's show, Atlanta's stadium's making great progress, and we've got a little bit of politics in baseball, scouting the Donald, all on this edition of MLB This Week. And hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week podcast with your weekly podcasters. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary.
And hello, Gary.
Hi, Rich. How you doing this week? Busy week in baseball once again.
Not bad, not bad. We're getting ready for the 4th of July holiday, and I've got a few explosive stories to bring us up close to that holiday.
Well, that sounds intriguing. I can't wait to get to them.
Yep, it's going to be a great show as usual, and we would like to thank our listeners for tuning in, staying with us here on MLB This Week. And Gary, how about those races? It looks like certain divisions are really shaping up pretty well.
Yeah, Rich, you think that you've got a handle on something, and then all of a sudden something shakes out, and some injuries or just teams go in a funk, and somebody else jumps up. I mean, Cleveland Indians are a big surprise. They've taken over. They've got a 3-game lead in the American League Central, and they literally came out of nowhere. Of course, Kansas City is the second-place team there, and Baltimore and Boston and Toronto are fighting it out in the American League East, and the Yankees are not too far away, game under 500. And out west, that's probably one of the, as far as the American League goes, that looks like a race that could get out of hand real quick, because Texas has got a 10-game lead over Houston now. Houston has righted the ship, Rich, and they've gotten themselves up to second place now.
Yeah, all of a sudden, as you say, winners of their last 5 in a row, and that's what it takes at this point. A lot of these teams are just a 5 or 6 game swing away from changing over, getting back to the Central. The Tigers even made a nice swing there. They have 4 in a row and wins. They're 38 and 35, and of course, as you said, the Indians on fire, 7-3 in their last 10. Winners of their last 6 in a row. So, yeah, that's what we're looking for, some winning streaks from some of these teams. And over in the AL East, it's Baltimore still leading the way. I don't think anybody picked Baltimore to still be in first place by June 24th.
No, I don't think so. A lot of people picked Toronto, and folks thought that Boston was going to be better and in a contention, but Baltimore, I think a lot of people thought they were going to be hurt by some of the moves in the offseason, and yet the Buck Showalter's got his team right on top there. It's a slim lead, game and a half, but it's better than being in last place.
That's for sure. And speaking of last place, the Tampa Bay Rays, losers of their last 7 in a row. Wow, they've really taken the elevator down. In the AL East, probably won't be able to recover from that too soon. Some other teams not doing so well over in the AL Central, 23 and 49, the Minnesota Twins, though they handled the Phillies quite well. I think they darn near swept them out of Minnesota. And out west, Gary, it's that team that everybody expected to do well for the last couple years, the Los Angeles Angels, now at 31 and 42. And I kind of think that if this isn't the year for them, they're not doing something right out there.
Yeah, Rich. And, now as we get into the end of June and into July, of course, the talks all begin about who's going to be buyers and who's going to be sellers at the trade deadline. And there's a lot of teams you could say that are going to be sellers. The Angels would have to be in one of those teams. I believe they're 11 games under 500. They're 16 games out of first. Yeah, they could make a run, but I don't really see it. Oakland's another team that could be a seller. So Minnesota, as you said earlier, and Tampa Bay could all be sellers in the market come this August 1st or by August 1st.
That's for sure. Looking over at the National League East, it's still the Washington Nationals in first with a 43-30 record. I don't know. Do you think your Mets can sort of catch them this year?
Well, the Mets have a couple of big. They're going to have a 3-game series with the Nationals, and I think a 4-game series. They've got a bunch of games coming up. It'll be easy. It'll be interesting to see where they stand. Right now, the Mets have got a lot of injuries. They've got 5 starters out, major, regular everyday players. So I don't know how good of a feel we're going to get over the next, but they have to at least break even at this point when they play Washington to stay within. You don't want to get too far out. I think they have a run in them. I think when they get the guys back, they're missing Lucas Duda. If we get Lucas Duda back, Travis d'Arnaud is back now, but we have to get guys like Duda back. We've got to get the other guys hitting as well. And, let's not count out Miami. Miami's could have a run in them too. And Washington's in a bit of a slump right now. They've lost 5 in a row. They're 4-6 over their last 10. So they're an injury away from going into a big swoon. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But I think the Mets have a run in them. I think they can catch them. But hey, there's always the wild card. And once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen.
That's for sure. And the Nationals face the Brewers this weekend here as we're doing the podcast on a special night for our show, Friday night here for you here near the end of June. And then, as you say, Gary, the Mets come into Washington for Monday, 27th of June, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So a 3-game series. And then the Cincinnati Reds come in to visit the Nationals next. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting week for baseball as we roll on towards the 4th of July holiday here. And how about the NL Central, Gary?
Wow. Well, I mean, we could almost call that already, I guess. If the Cubbies have got a big lead, a 9-game lead over the St. Louis Cardinals, who are in second place at 38-33. They don't seem ready to put a big charge in, but you never know with the Cardinals. Pittsburgh's a bit of a disappointment, Rich, this year. They're really struggling. They're 5 games below 500 at 34-39 and 14 games out already. And they're kind of a question mark this year and don't know what happened there. They did have some changeover, but still had some good players. But McCutcheon's struggling this year, not having a good year, and they're just not able to put it together. I don't think they have the same level of pitching that they had last year. A couple of starters are struggling. They have a terrific bullpen, but you have to get the lead and get to the bullpen in order to win games, and they're not doing that right now. Milwaukee's still a little bit of a surprise, Rich. I know they're 32-40, but a lot of people thought they were going to be a lot worse than that, and they're 15.5 games out. And then Cincinnati Reds are bringing up Urias. No surprise there. Everybody thought they were going to be not a very good team. And Rich, that takes us out to the West.
Yes, it does. San Francisco, and it's that even year again, as we've been saying. Believe it or not, Gary, they almost caught up with the Chicago Cubs as far as winning percentage. They're 47-27, and their last 10 games, they're 9-1, winners of 3 straight as we're doing the podcast tonight. And tonight's opponent, and for the weekend, they have the Philadelphia Phillies, which could be an easy team for them to beat the way they've been playing. So already the San Francisco Giants almost have a better record than the Chicago Cubs, and that's a little hard to believe.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And, you got to almost wonder about the World Series hangover. Is there such a thing? I mean, maybe that's why they have that. They win, then they have that down year, and then they recoup, I guess, that year, and then they're back the next year. It seems very strange, but that's what could be what going on with the Mets as well. They've had a little bit of a down year after going to the World Series last year, and maybe that's something to look forward to, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, the Giants are unbelievable. Dodgers are giving them a run, though. They're 8-2 over their last 10 games, and they're 6 out. And Colorado's a little bit of a surprise, Rich. 34-38, 12 games out, excuse me, and not a bad job by then. I don't think anybody picked them to be that high. I believe one of my picks was Arizona, and they're terrible. They're 35-40, 12.5 games out. And, of course, San Diego's in last place in the NL West. So it's an interesting race so far because there's some teams that you didn't think were going to be in it are in it, and some that you thought were going to be better are out of it. Minnesota, Arizona. And, it's going to be a terrific second half of the season.
Yes, it is. Plenty of baseball left to play here, even though some of these division leaders seem to be uncatchable at this point. But we'll have to see. If nothing's written in stone, the Cubs have lost 4 in a row now. They don't go on too many losing streaks like that, but maybe it could get contagious. You never know.
And it shows that they're human. They can lose as well. So that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Yes, indeed. Well, we've mentioned about the All-Star games coming up right after the 4th of July holiday, and it's probably a good time to take a little peek at the standings so far for the votes for most voted on players here. In the American League, leading the way, Kansas City Royals, Salvador Perez, catcher. At first base, it's Eric Hosmer for the Royals. So a couple of Royals right out of the gate there leading. Jose Altuve for the Houston Astros. He's got the most votes for the second base position. Xander Bogaerts for the Boston Red Sox at short. Manny Machado for the Baltimore Orioles at third base. And then out in the field, you have Mike Trout, Jackie Bradley, Mookie Betts, and DH is David Ortiz, as we're getting close to the end of voting. I believe it's another week or so of fan votes, and there's been a little brouhaha over the fan votes this year again.
Well, Rich, remember last year the Royals packed the ballot box, so to speak, the Royals fans, and they actually canceled millions of votes, I believe it was. I forget the number now, but I think it was in the millions that they actually canceled. And, I think it's time to end this thing or to figure out a tighter system. Why can't you just vote once? I mean,
Yeah.
Why do you got to be able to vote 25 times? Who comes up with that number? Just to vote once and be done with it.
Yeah, or it's kind of hard to regulate once, but how did they get to 25? Because people are voting a lot more than that. You could probably vote 25 times on each email address that you have. So, yeah, there's got to be a little bit of a better way. I kind of like the way they did it at the ballpark. If you go to the ballpark, you spend money buying tickets, those fans should really get the vote. I don't know if you should open it to computerized voting for just any Joe Schmo to sit home and, vote from his computer, so to speak. Let the ticketed fans get the vote in that.
Well, the problem is then people are going to say, I didn't get a chance to vote because I can't go to a game. Maybe I'm handicapped. Maybe I'm this. Maybe I'm that. Maybe I can't afford it. This way I have a chance to vote for who I'd like to see in the All-Star game. And that's possibly the reasoning behind it. But there's got to be a way of tightening it up a little bit and not letting it be so open the way it is now, because it's just kind of crazy in a way. It really is.
Yes, it is. We'll look at the National League voting All-Stars here. Yadier Molina for the St. Louis Cardinals for catcher, and a ton of Cubs. Do you have those Cubs handy?
I don't have it, but I could probably guess. Rizzo probably at first. I think the whole infield, the last I looked, was all Cubs.
Yeah, the whole infield took it. Anthony Rizzo at first. Ben Zobrist, a surprise for the Cubs, and that was a great pickup by the Cubs.
Yeah, he's having a good year.
Addison Russell at short, and Chris Bryant at third base for the Cubs, all leading the way in voting. And out in the outfield, it's Dexter Fowler for the Cubs, Bryce Harper, and from the New York Mets, Yoenis Cespedes.
No, that's certainly something that the Met fans are going to be happy about, getting Cespedes in. And, of course, the manager is Terry Collins, so I can imagine that you're going to see at least Noah Syndergaard there and possibly Jeurys Familia, and all good choices. Familia right now is the National League and maybe the Major League save leader. I'm not quite sure about that, but I believe he's got the lead or tied for the National League lead with saves. And so he deserves to be on the team, and Syndergaard is just Syndergaard.
Yes, he is. Thor, as they call him around the league. It'll be interesting to see how many extra Mets Terry Collins can add to the All-Star game there. It always happens, of course. I remember a few years ago, Charlie Manuel was the coach, or the manager, rather, and he added a few extra Phillies on there. They always try to take care of their own players.
Yeah, and I think in this instance he would be justified, especially with pitching when it comes to the Mets. I don't think he's going to bring a lot of guys, but like I said, a guy like Syndergaard, who's 8-2, I believe. So I mean, and Familia, if he's leading the league in saves, how do you not bring him?
That's for sure. So we'll have to see who gets on the rosters there for the All-Star game. And, of course, the Home Run Derby is going to be interesting as well. Maybe a pitcher or two taking part in it, as we've talked about on last week's show here. And while we're talking about shows on baseball, we want to invite you over to baseballtalkradio.com. It's the home for great baseball talk. Over 30 shows right now of all different types of baseball, from minor league baseball to baseball overseas in Japan and Europe, of course, all across the U.S. as well. So give it a listen. Gary's got a couple shows on there. His Brooklyn Cyclones show just restarted up for the New York Penn League, so you want to tune into that. You can find a link right there. And also, of course, his Mets Musings. And you can even check out Phillies Talk podcast, which is my podcast I do on the side there, and a whole lot of other great shows. So check it out, baseballtalkradio.com, and follow us on Twitter if you'd like. We're at MLBThisWeek. You can find out some of things that we're up to, our next shows and things like that, some comments and opinions during the week. So tune us in over at Twitter. And moving on here with the show, we've got our next topic up here. We're going to get into our comments that we carry each week, some stories that we find for you that you may have missed during the week in baseball. And Gary, you have one of the first stories up about Atlanta and their new stadium.
Well, Rich, as you know, the Atlanta Braves are moving into a new stadium next year, and it was a big construction milestone on SunTrust Park. That's what it's going to be called. The Atlanta Braves and crew formally celebrated a topping off ceremony when the last and top beam was raised and installed in the ballpark. Per tradition, the 33-foot long, 1,422-pound beam was raised with a tree and an American flag. But in departing from tradition, the beam was raised with an ash tree, not the traditional evergreen, Why the substitutions? Because ash is a traditional material in the construction of bats. So they kept the whole baseball theme there, Rich. The Braves held the ceremony to mark this topping off point, led by Braves chairman and CEO Terry McGurk. And this from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. McGurk said, "I'm happy to report construction is on time and on budget." There's something you don't hear every day. Let's see that the stadium and much of the adjacent mixed-use development will be open for the start of the 2017 season. So the big takeaway, it really is the ballpark construction is on time. How many times have we heard about ballparks being behind schedule? This one is on time, and they say it will be open next season for opening day in 2017.
Yeah, and they got that great weather down there in Atlanta, so they just fly along. Basically, even in some of the winter months, they're able to get that building done. And there's a live stream webcam that you can tune into right from the Atlanta Braves home at MLB.com. And you can find all the latest construction that's going on, the live streaming cam. And they also have a gigapixel webcam set up there. And yeah, I'm taking a look at it right now as we're doing the show, Gary. And yeah, they're just about done that ballpark for all intents and purposes. They got to throw the seats in and some other things, and of course the grass field and all, but they're making a great progress on that.
Yeah, and while you're on that, Rich, if people are interested in going there, they also have a time lapse of from the beginning, so it's very interesting to see. It's very quick, but you can see it go up, and fascinating thing when you get to see that kind of stuff.
Yes, indeed. So we're looking forward to the opening of SunTrust Park next year there in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm not too sure. I don't think they're going to have a retractable roof over that stadium, but it's probably something they might have considered the way it gets so humid down there.
Yeah, I think they're going to have some of it covered. Not so much the field, but the fans will be covered more than some other ballparks. I think it was at SunTrust Park that they were talking about extending that roof over a little more. But it's either there or it could be in the new Texas ballpark I think that's where I'm getting confused. It could be because Texas is going to start building a ballpark, and they're actually going to have it come out more over the people to protect them from the sun and everything. But I guess they feel they don't need really the retractable roof there. They don't get that many rain showers or rain outs, and they normally get the games in. So, and it does add a big expense onto a project.
Oh yeah, not to mention the mechanical end of it. Sometimes we hear from time to time how that certain stadiums malfunction with those roofs as well. So it's going to be interesting to see that stadium when it goes live next year. It didn't take them long to move out of Turner Field, but I know there's probably some fans that are happy about that and probably some that aren't.
Well, yeah, definitely. The problems that they're having, if any, if you want to consider that, is it's a different rail system and a mass transit system going out there, and there really isn't a train from downtown Atlanta, as from what I understand, out to it yet. I'm sure they'll try to rectify that. Maybe you'll have to transfer it to another, because it's another county. So each county has their own systems. But I did an interview with a guy that lives in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, covers the Braves, and for Atlanta Talk, but one of the Atlanta Baseball Talk, one of the shows on Baseball Talk Radio. And he was saying he's kind of bummed out, though, because he lives in Atlanta, downtown Atlanta, and he's 10 minutes walk from the stadium, and now he's got to go out to the suburbs now to catch a game. So he was not pleased about it, but I'm sure they're going to make, they're building a mixed use area. They're going to build hotels. They're going to have a little shopping mall there and whatnot. That seems to be the trend, to almost build like a community now around the ballpark, and they'll figure out all that they need and get it done.
Yes, they will. It'll be interesting to see how that does out there in its new location, and we're all rooting for them, of course, and we'll have to see what happens with that.
Yes, we love ballparks. And Rich, you want to bring a little politics into this show?
Well, I think, why not? It's the time for 4th of July and fireworks and things like that. The baseball diamonds are heating up around the league, so why not do a little politics and baseball on this one? And just the other evening, of course, the Grand Old Party and the Democrats got together in their annual baseball game. Not much said about this outside the Washington loop, but this year, Gary, the Republicans were the winners on the baseball diamond, and it's the first time they've won this game, which is for charity. It's in its 55th year, of course, and the Republicans pulled it off 8-7.
Wow.
With an exciting finish where they pulled out this game in the late innings. So the last several years, in fact, all of Obama's tenure in Washington, it's been the Democrats to win this game. And it's not like a celebrity softball match. These guys are serious out there. They're on the mound. They play at Nationals Field, and they go all out for this game. And this year it was the Republicans that took the win.
Do we have the scorecard, the box score on this one?
I don't have many stats from the game. A Democratic star here in this article from the Washington Post says that Representative Cedric L. Richmond from Louisiana, he was a former college baseball pitcher, tried to steal home in a photo that was retweeted by some baseball guys there. He was called out at home. Very dramatic play there. And also, let's see what else it says here. The final inning was Representative Patrick Murphy, a Democrat from Florida, his turn to pitch for the Democrats. And of course, in this article, they have a picture of him. But it was up to Murphy to hold the Democrats' lead. They had the lead going into the last inning there, and the crowd actually got into it big time, but that's just when the Grand Old Party pulled it out. They seized the victory in the last inning and never looked back. So good for the Grand Old Party. They finally won something there in Washington.
Yeah, and Rich, I'm looking at a picture and it looks like they all got different uniforms on. How the heck did they figure that out?
Yeah, I guess a lot of the players wear their old uniforms from college days or things like that. It appears it's very strange to look at on the field. One guy has his Texas Aggies uniform on, and a couple of others have some different uniforms on. And in attendance for that game, watching, was none other than the kid, 2016 Hall of Fame inductee Ken Griffey Jr., who threw out the first pitch at that game. So Ken Griffey Jr. getting a little FaceTime there with the politicians.
Yeah, there you go. And he did spend some time, I believe, later in the day later in the week with Obama. So Griffey getting it all done. It looks like
Yes,
they had didn't have the biggest of crowds, but
no, it was not a sellout there at Nationals
let's
Field.
just leave it at that.
And part two of my politics in baseball this week, scouting Donald Trump as a baseball player. There was an article just appeared recently online in Deadspin.com. They're kind of famous for running some smear type of stories on certain people, and they smeared Donald Trump pretty good in this one. it actually was a story about how Donald Trump was as a youth baseball player. It says by the sixth grade, Donald's power as a right-handed hitter was enough that fielders shifted to left field whenever he batted. A player that used to play with him said, quote, if he had hit the ball to right field, he could have had a home run because no one was there. So the Donald is a left side pull at the plate, or he used to be anyway. Trump, who started out as a catcher, he was often the dirtiest uniform on the field. He hustled a lot and he chased down foul balls, clinging to his mask. And he really had a sort of a Pete Rose demeanor on the field most of the time, they say. He's a tough ball player, was Donald Trump. So it's a little bit a look at politics and baseball this week.
Well, I'm not surprised at that. I mean, he does that in business. He's kind of a Pete Rose, scrappy businessman. So I'm sure he was that way on the diamond as well. And, he's a pretty good golfer, too. So I guess there's some athletic ability there. By the way, who did Hillary Clinton play for in her youth? Or couldn't she decide? Because she was a Cubs fan, then she was a Yankees fan. Now is she a Nationals fan? I'm confused, but let's not get into that. That's for another show.
Yep, we might have to do some research, see if Hillary got on the diamond at all. Playing some softball probably would have been a few years ago, but yes, interesting. We'll have to give her a little equal time here in the sense of politics and our fairness towards the politicians.
And I think Bernie Sanders was probably a left fielder.
Yeah. If he played back in the days of probably Ty Cobb or something.
Oh, boy. Okay. You went there.
Well, we're going back into history a little bit. And that brings up our next story about a nice new mural commemorating an old field.
Yes, good old Crosley Field. I remember when I was a kid with Cincinnati playing in Crosley Field, the former home of the Cincinnati Reds. It's been torn down, of course, but it's been commemorated with a new mural and displays at the site of the old ballpark. It's now the home to City Gospel Mission, funded mainly by Reds Hall of Fame Museum. One of the great ballpark museums, the 17-foot by 50-foot mural, will be open to the public after it is completed by an arts group, Keep Cincinnati Beautiful. The grand opening of the mural and historic display comprising the Crosley Field historic site is, it opened already. So if you're in Cincinnati, go out, you can go and see it. Along with the mural at Crosley Field, visitors can also sample the following: a self-guided tour for visitors, replica left field foul pole and right field foul pole, and replica light tower, historical photos provided by the Reds Hall of Fame Museum, a plaza with replica seats and commemorative bricks, base markers, and memorabilia for purchase. The purpose of the project is to acknowledge and preserve the history of the field that means so much to the Reds, the fans, and the city, offering a chance for visitors to experience that history in a significant way. So, Rich, I don't know if you remembered Old Crosley Field. They were probably in Riverfront by the time you were getting into baseball, but it was really an old ballpark, and I remembered vaguely myself. But they had an incline out there I think it was in center field, and reminiscent of the one they had in the Houston ballpark that they took out this year, I believe. So it's another one of those old beautiful stadiums that they let go, and it got in disrepair, and now at least is some connection to it through this organization. And it's a good thing because people should know about these things. They should know about these old ballparks and embrace them, really, because there were some really terrific bandboxes, but boy, they were terrific ballparks.
Yes, they were. And as you said, yeah, Crosley Field, I'm doing a little research on it through Wikipedia right now. It was in use from 1912 to June 24th. And lo and behold, it's June 24th as the time we're doing this show here, 1970. So, anniversary of the closing of Crosley Field many years ago, 1970. And as you said, Gary, that's part of baseball, the history of it, looking at some pictures of the place. And it kind of reminds me of your old time fields that you saw in places like Philadelphia that were set in neighborhoods and
Right.
they were part of the community. Now they're sort of in their own little areas designated as quote unquote industrial type areas. But years ago, it seems like they were really part of the community more.
Yeah, and a lot of the players lived in the local community. So we've lost a little bit of that, but with the money involved, I guess, and everything, the celebrity that we've made of these players, if anybody wants to study and see what we're talking about here with community of ball players, go read The Boys of Summer. I'm sure you can still get that book. It's a terrific book. It's about the Brooklyn Dodgers. But they lived in Brooklyn, a lot of these guys. I mean, they would walk through the streets of Flatbush and people knew them. And you don't see as much as that now. Players drive to the game and they get there so early. And,
And their Porsches and Mercedes, I might add.
yes. And their Land Rovers. So a lot of it is missing, and of course the rise in the memorabilia market. Everybody's more cautious about signing because is it going to be on eBay, and so it's a whole new world now. But that's a good book if anybody wants to read about old time baseball, and it's really not that old. Well, to us it is. To me, it isn't. But to me, old time baseball is the 1890s and the 1900s. But yeah, go check that out. It's a terrific book.
Yes, indeed. And moving on to our next story here, a lot of people remember that Mike Doc Emmerich, who, of course, is a great hockey announcer, had his first attempt at calling a game this past spring. Pittsburgh Pirate fan he is, from the Pittsburgh area. And he got into the Pirates radio broadcast booth and called some of a 1:05 p.m. game against the Blue Jays at McKechnie Field there back in March. Well, Emmerich had said that part of his dream and his bucket dream, so to speak, was to do an actual game of the Pittsburgh Pirates. So Bob Costas actually got word of this, and both guys actually worked for the same broadcast network, which is NBC. And Costas contacted Mike Emmerich and asked him late last year whether or not he would like to do a game with him on the MLB network. And that's going to happen on July 8th. Emmerich and Costas will get together and do a game together. It's going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates and it looks like the Blue Jays for that game. So it's going to be an interesting thing where Emmerich is going to actually take a couple innings on his own, and he's going to do 3 innings of color commentary, the first 3 innings. And it's going to be very interesting to hear this.
And I'm sorry, that's going to be on MLB Network?
I believe it's going to be on MLB Network, scheduled for July 8th, just about 3-4 weeks from now. Actually, let's see, just 2.5 weeks from now. So actually, they'll be playing the Cubs and the Pirates. The Pirates will be home, of course. And Emmerich is very excited about it. He's real happy to get the chance to do this, and he's also taking it very seriously. He's really studying up on it, and he's going to give it a real good go at it.
I'm sure he will, and I'm sure he is studying up. One of the best hockey announcers of all time, Really a terrific announcer, and as you say, Rich, he's a huge Pittsburgh Pirate fan. So this is going to be a thrill for him, and as you say, it should be interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll be like an LA Dodger type with, or will he be just a regular guy, sort of like, I don't know. You had some good announcers there in New York. Ralph Kiner was pretty good. I wonder who he will try to emulate when he does the broadcast.
Well, he grew up in Pittsburgh with Bob Prince and some of those guys, so maybe he gets his he'll get his style from there. But I once interviewed an announcer for the Lowell Spinners, still does the game, which is the New York Penn League team, and he also does hockey in the off season, collegiate hockey, and he says that it's easier actually to do the hockey than baseball for the one reason being that in baseball you have a lot of fill time. Hockey, the action's continuous, so you don't have time to think really. You're talking past this, past the next guy, and there's a shot on goal, blah 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 blah. Whereas in baseball, there's that, and there's the pitch, and it's a strike. Yeah. So it's a whole different cadence, and I was amazed at that because I would thought that hockey, because of the speed, would be so difficult to call. But and I think Doc Emmerich said the same kind of thing, that's the big difference, is that the time that you have to fill in between pitchers. Now, of course, he's going to be on TV, and he's going to have an analyst there, so that's a little bit different than the guy I interviewed, John Leahy, great announcer, by the way. It's a little bit different with him because he's doing radio and he's by himself. But I can understand where the fill would have to be the most difficult part.
Yes, indeed. And Costas is quoted here in the article here that appeared in the Washington Post as saying he's not expecting a polished baseball announcer beside him at PNC Park. But Emmerich is skilled at using anecdotes, and that's a critical skill that you need in the baseball booth. He went on to say, quote, "No matter how great a guy he is, he'll be better on his 10th game than his first." So I guess Costas has a lot of experience in that sort of stuff.
Well, yes, he does, and he can relay some of that to Doc Emmerich. But that's going to be interesting. I'll have to check that out.
So July 8th, the Pirates and the Cubs. That'll be a definite game to check out. And you have a little bit of news on a celebrity all-star softball game.
Well, Rich, before every all-star game, they have the night before, they have the home run derby and all of that. And part of that is a celebrity softball game. So they announce some of the first wave of announcements of who's going to participate in that. And it's the Academy Award winner, J.K. Simmons, the swimsuit model, Nina Agdal, Fallout Boy bassist Pete Wentz, U.S. soccer legend Landon Donovan, and former Padres great Trevor Hoffman are among the first round of participants that were announced by Major League Baseball for the All-Star Legends and Celebrity Softball game on July 10th at Petco Park in San Diego. Hall of Famers Ozzie Smith and Rollie Fingers will be there as always, and they will be joined by two former players who may also be joining them one day soon in Cooperstown, Tim Raines and Trevor Hoffman. Raines drew 69.8% of the vote in January, Hoffman 67.3%, so they're nearing the 75% threshold required for Hall of Fame induction. Also participating will be actor Tyler Hoechlin, a former Arizona State infielder, better known as one of the stars of Richard Linklater's critically acclaimed film, Everybody Wants Some, and the 2017 sequel to 50 Shades of Grey. Mark Paul Gosselaar, star of the fall's Fox series Pitch, will play along with Sterling K. Brown, star of the People vs. O.J. Simpson, American Crime Story, and NBC's highly anticipated fall dramedy, This Is Us. The remaining All-Star legends and celebrity participants will be announced at a later date. The softball game will be televised by ESPN immediately following the T-Mobile Home Run Derby on Monday, July 11th. So they're already getting set up for the All-Star game and the festivities that surrounds it. And, of course, they make it a whole 2-day, 3-day affair there. And the Futures game and the softball game and the home run derby, and of course the game itself.
And that's always the best part about that weekend. All the great things you can do, from the fan fests that they have to the batting practice that you can go to. And that's on my bucket list. I think I'd like to attend an all-star weekend one of these years.
When's the last time Philly had it, Rich?
Oh, God, it goes back a long time ago. Probably, if I had to guess, I know they had it in 76, I believe. And I think they've had it one time since, but probably not for a long time. I expected them to have it, being that their new stadium opened up in 2004, but they didn't have it yet at the new stadium for the All-Star game. So, and the way it's going with the picks, it seems like all these new stadiums are opening and then they're getting the game. So it's going to be hard to say when it'll return to Philadelphia. I just brought it up online here, and it looks like 96 was the last time that it was held in Philadelphia.
Well, and they used to go National League, American League parks, and now it's going to be 4 years in a row in a National League park. But I believe in San Diego, the National League will be the road team. Crazy as that sounds. And it's going to be, as I say, San Diego this year, in Miami in 17, and Washington, D.C. in 18. So, the city and the team has to request it, and perhaps they don't want to have it. Maybe they feel like it's too much work.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. As you said, it stays with the National League there for 4 years in a row. So I'm sure with 2019, 3 years away now, that they're going to go back to the American League with that. I would think that would be fair. So yeah, it's going to be a long time before it returns to Philly, but maybe I can catch that 18 game in Washington, D.C.
There you go.
So,
yeah, maybe I'll see you down there.
Looking forward to that possibly. So always good to start early. So we got a 2-year jump on it.
There you go, Rich. Let's start planning now.
Well, some people might be jumping around right now in the stadiums. There's a special promotion going on right now as we're doing the podcast, even as we speak, Gary. Battle Creek, Michigan, one of the more strange minor league promotions that a team could have. Tonight, it's open carried and holstered concealed weapons night with a Second Amendment promotion that a team called the Battle Creek Bombers have run. It's hosting its Second Amendment Education Night, which invites gun owners to bring their guns along as long as you have the permits. And very interesting here. The quote says, "This is about being proactive. This is about taking personal responsibility for my own safety." So very interesting how baseball sort of allowed this promotion, especially within the last couple weeks, that we've seen what happened around the country and what continues to happen all the time around the country here. But the Battle Creek Bombers going out on a limb with this one. Very interesting promotion, Gary.
and I bet you there'll be no crime around that ballpark tonight.
Or else.
That's true. Don't mug anybody coming out of that ballpark, because they might be packing. Oh,
And a quote from one of the originators here of the evening here says, quote, everything is focused on awareness, avoidance, and safety, the proper rules of handguns in society. So it's about doing the right thing, obviously. Here's another quote. Quote, if we let them control our way of life, we've lost already. Meaning, of course, your Second Amendment rights, which goes back to the right to bear arms. Um, but very interesting how they're approaching this. And it didn't really get a whole lot of press leading up to this game. There was a story online about a minister who planned to protest the evening out front of the stadium here in Battle Creek, Michigan. And of course, the night comes with rules as well. Those carrying firearms will be given wristbands, and that is to help indicating that they are not allowed to buy alcoholic beverages at the game. So if you do participate in that, they do have some ground rules. So yet another interesting minor league promotion that we've been talking about in the last couple of years.
and there'll be ways around that. The wife can go get the beers then for you.
There's always a way.
Always a way. Well, you bring a small scissor and you cut off the darn thing, but
So yeah, there's always a way, as you said. that
you
little wristband didn't do anything.
Good for them though. I mean, it's wacky, and I get that, but good for them to standing up to the political correct crowd, and this is just a complete opposite of the political correctness movement, and good for them for having the guts to stand up to them.
So we'll have to see the results of that and how successful it is. Battle Creek, Michigan. I don't think we'll see that at a major league ballpark too soon. That I think is pushing it a little bit, but yeah, hooray for liberty and prosperity and your Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, it fits more a minor league ballpark because it's usually, the vast majority of the crowd is the hometown crowd. So that would fit in more rooting for the team. You don't get a lot of travelers with the other team. You get a handful, but the animosity isn't the same as it would be on a major league level.
Yes, indeed. Well, we had a great Game 7 played the other night in the basketball finals. Upset there by the team that won, and you have a great story leading us out of the podcast tonight.
Well, Rich, this came up because, of course, you're talking about the Cavaliers winning the NBA championship with LeBron James leading the way. And one day after he was drafted by the Cavaliers in 2003, he was a guest of the Cleveland Indians before a Reds game at then Jacobs Field, now Progressive Field. And James received a tour from friend CC Sabathia. He swapped stories with fellow number 1 overall pick Ken Griffey Jr. and threw a halfway decent ceremonial first pitch. And his attempt, though, at batting practice earlier in the day left something to be desired. This is from an AP story about the proceedings 13 years ago. After the Reds finished their pregame batting practice, James jumped into the cage for few swings and a lot of misses, with former Reds pitcher Tom Hume, now the club's bullpen coach, lobbing pitches to him. James fanned on the first 9 pitches before hitting a soft liner to right field. Hume said when asked about Jones' swing, he needs a lot of work. Jones, for his part, said he threw me a couple of curveballs, but I finally started to hit them. James said, peeling off his batting glove, it's fun to do something you don't always do. I'm competitive at everything, but apparently not as good as he is on the basketball court. And that's why we see him there dunking balls instead of trying to hit them, Rich.
Yeah, and there's been a good history of some baseball or basketball players that transitioned over to baseball for a few years. I remember Michael Jordan and the Cubs, or the White Sox, actually almost coming to fruition a few years ago. In fact, I have some baseball cards of that, some real nice baseball cards that were in a series of that occasion. But yeah, ton of basketball players have come over and tried the sport. And as you said, Gary, it's not an easy sport.
No, it isn't. And yeah, there's been Dave DeBusschere, the NBA Hall of Famer. He played a couple of years some baseball. And how about Gene Conley, a pitcher? He played some basketball and baseball as well. Chuck Connor, the rifleman, he also played some baseball and professional basketball. And of course, the football players, John Elway played some. The two best probably were Deion Sanders played with the Braves and a couple of other football teams, and of course he had that trifecta, I guess you'd call it. He played in a football game and then flew to the World Series game, played in a World Series game the same evening for the Braves. And of course, Bo Jackson, who was probably he was going to be a star in either one when he got hurt playing football. Had he played baseball, he would have been an awesome player.
Yes, indeed. And I'm looking at a website here again, Wikipedia, multi-sport athletes. Ton of guys. Kenny Lofton played basketball at University of Arizona. Going back to Joe Morgan, was a standout hockey player up in Massachusetts and at Boston College. So yeah, a lot of these guys that are athletes are good in many sports, and maybe James just has to take a few cuts out in the batting cage in the off season to get better.
I think he's doing pretty good at the other sport he's in. So, I don't think he's going to worry too much about taking a few cuts in the batting cage and becoming a pro baseball player.
Yeah, that about signals the end of his baseball career. And it's the end of this podcast. But we'd like to thank you for tuning in to the show here, show number 96 of MLB This Week. And we'll gear it up, getting ready for our show before July 4th, the July 4th holiday weekend. We'll have another show in between now and then. And Gary, it was another fast show, and it was another good show.
Yes, sir. Always a pleasure, Rich. And see you next time.